Welcome to this video, where we'll show you when and how to use the audit planning tool to plan audits for single-site farms and feed mills. If you haven't watched the introduction video yet, we recommend checking that out first for the full picture. Before using the tool to plan an audit, it may be useful to gather some information about the farm or the feed mill. You will need information on the number of employees, any ASC certificate suspensions in the last 12 months, the number and grading of non-conformities raised at the last audit and whether that audit was done remotely, and finally, the working language skills of an audit team. We will now run through an example of how to complete the form for an initial audit of a salmon farm in Chile. Let's start by adding the certificate holder, the ASC certificate number, and the UOC ID. The certificate number and UOC ID can be found on the ASC database once the farm is registered. And if the farm is new to the ASC program and has not been registered yet, don't worry, this information is not vital to the tool's function. The farm is in Chile, so we will select this from the country name drop-down menu. Since this cell is yellow, we must complete this field for the tool to work properly. Based on current data, ASC has determined the country risk score of Chile to be low, and this will impact some of the audit parameters. Countries can have a risk score of low, medium or high. Details of how these scores are determined can be found on the source data worksheet. But going back to our main worksheet, you might have noticed two things. First, some grey cells were automatically filled with information that relates to the country you selected. And second, new cells have appeared, showing you the next steps that are now relevant based on your input. So let's complete these new cells as they are progressively revealed. Continuing with our Chilean farm example, we will select Farm Standard in the field for the standard, then the certification type as Single Site, and the audit type as Initial Audit. It's important to remember to select Initial Audit when planning for a unit of certification's first audit under the farm standard, even if the farm is already certified. This will not reset the certification cycle of the unit of certification. Now, let's move on to Section 2 and complete the newly revealed UOC information section with information on the farm's employees. In this example, let's say the farm has 9 employees directly hired and 0 employees that are hired by labor organizations and 0 international migrants. Now that the employee information is completed, the employee interviews calculator has determined that at least 3 employees must be interviewed during the initial audit. The CAB is welcome to interview more employees at their discretion, but in this case 3 employee interviews is the minimum. Let's move on to the next section on remote audit risk assessment. As we are planning for an initial audit, a remote audit is not permitted, and this is automatically indicated by the calculator. The final section of this worksheet is the Audit Team Composition tool. This will calculate the minimum number of individual auditors that a CAB should deploy for an audit. The two options are that either a single auditor is deployed to complete the environmental and social audits, or that 2 auditors are deployed and one of them is a separate social auditor whose role will be to exclusively complete the social audit. Remember, the CAB can send as many auditors as they deem appropriate to complete an audit, but the minimum number to be sent is specified by the audit planning tool. Let's now complete this section using our example. We must indicate the number of critical social nonconformities raised at the previous CAB audit. As this is an initial audit, the answer will be 0. Based on the information provided, the calculator has determined that this audit can be done by at least one auditor who is competent to complete the environmental and social criteria. You can find more information on what competencies are required for auditors in Appendix 4 of the ASC Farm and Feed CAR. But now that we have completed the tool for an initial audit, let's fast forward a year and plan an audit surveillance one for the same Chilean farm from our example. We will first update the audit type to surveillance 1 and update the number of employees if this has changed since the initial audit. In our example, The farm now has 38 employees, so as you can see, the sample size for employee interviews has been raised to 4. As this planning example is for a surveillance, the audit may be eligible to be done remotely. To know whether this is possible, we'll need to answer the questions in the remote audit risk assessment, which are now visible. In this case, we have answered no to all the risk assessment questions, and the calculator has indicated that a remote audit is permitted for this surveillance audit. If we were to change one or more of our answers to yes, the calculator will update and indicate that a remote audit is not permitted. If you're not sure where to find the information to answer some of these questions, you can check the webpage called Find a Farm on the ASC website and review the certification history of a UOC and a previous audit report. Now that we've used the tool to plan an initial and surveillance audit for a farm, and before we use the tool again, let's use the button to clear all data to reset it. We can also use this button if we made any mistakes and need to reset the form. We will now use the tool to plan a surveillance audit for a feed mill in Guatemala. As you can see, we have already completed some of the details, and the tool has indicated that the country risk score for Guatemala is high. As we are planning for a feed mill, let's select ASC Feed Standard as the ASC standard. In this case, the employee interviews calculator has indicated that 19 employee interviews are required, based on the country risk score and number of employees. You may notice that the remote audit risk assessment is unavailable, and has indicated that a remote audit is not permitted. This is because remote audits are not currently permitted for the ASC Feed Standard. However, this may change in future. You may also notice that the Audit Team Requirements section has determined that a minimum of 2 auditors are required to complete this audit. This is because the social risk of this country is rated as high. And that's it. You should now be able to use the audit planning tool to plan farm and feed audits for single-site units of certification. The output of the tool will help a CAB in allocating the appropriate auditor and travel resources before the audit must be scheduled and announced. A small note: the best time to use the audit planning tool is more than 42 days before an audit. In the next video, we'll learn how to use the audit planning tool for multi-sites.